artists and others whose views are controversial. Serve immediately. For our next course, government issue morality. It's a long way from apple pie.
We are all dominated by electronic media. For the most part, it's a one-way process. But it shouldn't be a one-way process any more than any means of communication should be one-way. So what we're trying to do in Access is to give millions of ordinary people the right to use this vehicle to speak with each other.
Hi, Marvin. Say hi. Wait, say hi. Lena.
Ordinary people can make interesting, important television if we're given a chance.
I believe it's a battle for the soul of America. I believe it is a battle that says that what kind of country are we going to be now? Are we going to be one that listens to Latinos, Asians, African Americans, Native Americans, gays, lesbians? Or are we going to be a country that is authoritarian, homogeneous?
A political prisoner is one who, for the most part, is incarcerated because of his or her political beliefs and some type of action that is in opposition to the United States government. We define a prisoner of war as an individual who is a member of a nation or a citizen of a nation who is struggling for national liberation against U.S. imperialism, for example, Native Americans or Puerto Ricans or New African Independence Movement, and who engages the enemy in some armed military action. And for the most part, they are part of the military clandestine formation. And therefore, when they get captured, in most cases, they take the position that they're prisoners of war who are captured in a battle for national liberation. The United States is beginning to be exposed as a nation which has a problem within its borders. It is not the democracy that it historically has been able to project itself as, and so it has to hide the fact that it has political prisoners, because if it's a democracy, then there should be no reason for dissent. And so it cannot show that it has literally over 150 political prisoners within the United States.
But we think easily of Geronimo Pratt, who was in Northern California at the time, and murder committed was in Southern California. The FBI had him and other Panthers under surveillance. Now the FBI records have disappeared, so he has asked for the records that would demonstrate that they were bugging him in North Carolina at the time of the Northern California at the time of the murder. He isn't able to get them because they have disappeared. We charge that they were destroyed by the FBI. So here is what we believe to be a clear frame.
I'm a prisoner of war because of a secret war that was waged against the Black Liberation Movement in the 60s. Basically, throughout a pre-dawn raid on the Black Panther Party headquarters in Los Angeles, California in 1969, December 8th, 4 days after a similar raid was made against Panthers in Chicago, and as you know, resulted in the death of Fred Hampton and Lamar Clark. Out of that was a trial which lasted almost a whole year, in which we basically beat. The jury came back and said, well, the police, the law enforcement were in the wrong. And we were basically in a right for defending ourselves. I was not even at the shootout, physically, and yet I was convicted of what you call a lesser included offense. In other words, we won the case, but the jury saw fit to find something to keep me in prison for.
What you're about to see is CBS TV's dramatization of Chief Prosecutor Robert Tannenbaum's book about the killing of 2 New York City police officers on May 21st, 1971 in Harlem, New York. Herman Bell, Anthony Bottom, and Albert Washington, 3 activists from the Black Panther Party now serving 25 years to life, are portrayed as the murderers. This CBS docudrama, which first aired in 1985 and continues to run on national television today, is a carefully crafted lie. The truth is that the New York 3 were wrongly convicted in a rigged trial, and that government agencies are the real thugs and criminals.
Sector 394, this unit.
Good evening, ladies. Look, that man was going off and it's our duty to take him in. It's not right.
During the course of the trial, attorneys had made motion to bring up the issues of COINTELPRO, and the judge denied it. He said, in effect, that we did not have any proof that we were victims of COINTELPRO. The truth of the matter is that we did not have the proof. The DA had all the proof.
Should the trial be reopened, Mr. Scott, would you testify that you, in fact, buried the gun?
Yes.
Knowing that your freedom might be in jeopardy?
Yes.
Why?
Because I want to tell the truth. I think there's a need that the truth needs to be known with these 3 people. With me, I think I just need the satisfaction that I know that I told the truth.
And for that, you'd be willing to serve time if necessary?
Yes.
I consider myself a political prisoner.
I still believe in the power of the people, okay? And with that power, right, we could be out of prison in 18 months.
If we don't get support from people in the streets, then I'll be 55 or 56 years before I go to the parole board. I'll just be in here rotting away, and as will my 2 co-defendants.
Her question was just, what is the avenue that might get you released? Would it be a new trial? Would it be a presidential pardon? Even public demand or pressure? Do you have any idea on that, Leonard?
Yeah. Well, since it's obvious that I'm not going to get any relief through the courts, and a good example of what I'm going to say right now is to look at what South Africa They've just released prisoners there from because of international pressure, prisoners that they said they would never release because they belong to the African National Congress, etc. I don't know if the people, you're aware of what the history is around there, what the ANC does. But from international pressure, they finally released a lot of these people. Now, of course, yes, some of them have done 25, 26 years. And but if you really look back a few years, there's the international pressure just started 4 or 5 years ago. So this is what we have to do here. In this case, we have to become very committed. You have to study and memorize the legal issues. You have to get out and start speaking to your neighbors. You have to. We have to build an army of people out there to put that political pressure that it's going to take to get me out of here.
Who's the freedom fighter? Geronimo Pratt! Who's the real terrorist? Who's the freedom fighter? Geronimo Pratt!
Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt has spent the last 18 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Substantial evidence has been uncovered pointing to a deliberate FBI frame-up. In fact, the main prosecution witness at the trial was proven to be a paid FBI informant. Despite this and other evidence, the courts refused to grant Geronimo a new trial, and the parole board refuses to release him.
His case is just so blatant, just so obvious, there are mountains and mountains and mountains of documents that prove that he was a victim of COINTELPRO, but the man is still in prison.
I had been telling them all along, the lawyers, and speaking in open court, trying to make these assertions, and they were looking at me like I was ego tripping. That would be the thing I would get back at, like, nigga is ego tripping. The FBI didn't have nothing, they didn't care nothing. And so I would cry. I'm in Folsom Prison in a hole. I'm in a hole here. The communication weren't that good. So I tried the best I could. I wrote different people and to try to expose what I knew. And I knew was FBI involvement. It was 1972. I think I was right in AC here, either in Folsom or 4A. The news came out of some radicals in Reading, Pennsylvania, I think, Media, Pennsylvania, breaking into some files, and then all of a sudden this COINTELPRO, right? And it was, Watergate was happening, and we didn't have TVs and radios back then, so every now and then we would see a newspaper, and I remember seeing the Watergate burglars, and I looked on there and saw Bernard Barker, and I remember him and a couple others would be in Los Angeles a lot, harassing us with there were a lot of anti-Castro Cubans there.
The movement to free Geronimo Pratt is happening in courts, in communities, in Congress, and internationally. Recently, Congressman Ronald Dellums introduced a congressional resolution calling for an investigation into Geronimo's case and those of other political prisoners. In 1980, Amnesty International stated, "The interest of justice can only be served by granting Mr. Pratt a new trial." Geronimo Pratt is being held for no other reason than his political beliefs. He has said, "If I'd actually committed the murder, I'd be out by now. The longer I'm in prison, the more clear it is that the murder isn't why I'm here." Why won't the U.S. government set Geronimo Pratt free?